This is being brought by, Councilmember Hopkins and me. I will refer Councilmember Hopkins. Go ahead, and if you could introduce this agenda item, please.
This is just to clarify the language that's in the city charter right now about no one over 12 years old being allowed to play baseball on the diamond at my park. And it's just to add the language for the safety of park visitors in the swimming pool, the dog park, and the playground, that, as it reads, that people over 12 years of age can't do it. And also it defines playing baseball as throwing the ball as well as hitting it with the bat, and to change that to be just hitting a ball with the bat, because we don't want to bombard kids in a swimming pool with blunt objects falling from the sky. But we do want to make sure that it's clear why that's in there, because there is no fence around the outfield. And anyway, there's no fence, there's no protection, and it's a smaller than regulation field. So it would be very easy to hit someone with a ball if you had a regular adult out there batting baseballs.
Thank you, Councilmember Hopkins. Are there any questions or comments on this agenda item from the council? Okay, I guess there is none. So I will go ahead and open any comments from the public on this agenda item. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just was. I lost my video, but okay. If you could raise your hands or wave your hands or something so that the city manager will recognize you if you want to comment on this agenda item.
We have a John Huth with his hand raised. John Huth, please proceed. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. I think it's a good idea. I just wonder when the last time any kind of official baseball game was conducted there. I've been watching for about the last month on Saturday and Sunday afternoons. There's been at least 2 volleyball games going on at one time on the soccer field. And I'm just wondering if maybe the baseball diamond, if it's not being used that frequently as a baseball diamond, maybe it could, part of it at least, could be converted into sand volleyball courts or whatever, especially the area between shelter number 2 and the tennis courts, which would be the outfield for the baseball diamond. And anyway, just to make a rather simple item rather more complex, but I just, and then that, because sooner or later the soccer games are going to be getting back, and then you're going to have probably a better chance of conflict between soccer players and volleyball than volleyball and baseball. So just a thought.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments on this agenda item?
Mr. Dean Moore has his hand raised. Mr. Dean Moore, please proceed. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, yeah, I think John has a great idea about the sand volleyball courts. I did used to play softball in a small playground that had had the children's play equipment in the left field area that we had to try to protect when kids came out to play. In this case, with the fence up and everything, there wouldn't be any way to protect people in the pool. And I think it's a good restriction that people that can crush the ball not be playing softball in that diamond while there are people in the playground area or the pool area. But I like the idea of the sand volleyball courts. Thank you.
Thanks. more comments on this agenda item?
Mr. Vice Mayor, this is Robin. I want to just quickly add, as Mr. Hurth stated, there have been obviously people playing out there volleyball in the last few weeks. I've observed some of them as well. I actually stopped, and when I was out there were only 5, and they were pretty spread out playing volleyball up on the top field, the soccer field. And I asked them what their preference. We would like to consider adding a volleyball court similar to what was suggested. And when I asked the players what their preference would be, they were not overly supportive of a sand volleyball court, but they were overly supportive of something with a hard surface, whether grass or dirt, which is what they've been using at that top field, at least in the 21 months that I've been here. So we are contemplating, and we will, just so all of you are aware, that we could benefit from having a volleyball court somewhere out there that certainly our residents are using, and others. The baseball, softball field, again, in the 21 months I've been here, I believe my daughter and I have been the ones that have been out there the most. We have not been out there in the last 6 months, but I think the last time we were there was on March the 14th, thereabouts, that Saturday or Sunday shortly after we closed, which is when I observed about 25 people inside the tennis courts. It kind of prompted us to close the tennis courts. So yeah, it has not been used very frequently for baseball or softball. I think it has been used more for cricket. I've observed people out there playing not a full cricket game, but certainly, and I'm not overly familiar with cricket other than it's very somewhat similar to baseball, but probably about a dozen people spread out over from just outside of Pavilion 2 and the little bridge over to 40 Oaks, spread out all the way back, even on the other side of the little fence toward the pool, and even somebody over where the boardwalk is located, and the boardwalk was under construction when I observed several groups using it. So we are mindful that really that field would be better used for other purposes rather than Little League baseball or softball, since it really stopped being used for that from what I've been told, several years ago. Even some of the equipment that we found there is several years old. So that is one of the reasons why we planted grass out there, and we were
there's some in the shed.
looking to seed that dirt area and convert it into grass. So we'll give you more updates as we progress and as we compile our budget for next year to see if we can accommodate putting in a volleyball court or something even related to cricket, such as just a practice hitting area with netting, for example.
Thank you. Any comments before I close this comment section on this agenda item?
It doesn't directly relate to this, but we seem to have gone off track anyway, but that might be a good question to put out to the public and to the residents, is what sports they would like to see accommodated in the city if we're not using our park areas to the most useful direction, if they would like basketball courts or cricket or what have you. But maybe that would be a good thing to get the public involved in, since it's their park, and decide how to use the land best.
Certainly, we will do that.
Absolutely, thank you. All right, since there is no other comments on this agenda item, we're going to move to agenda item E2, which is discuss appointing a council member to the vacant seat on DDA. As we all are aware that there is a vacancy on the DDA that was seated by former council member Bell, and so that creates an open seat on the DDA. So we wanted to go ahead and fill it up. I think that's just straightforward. This part of the DDA seat was appointed by the council by majority vote around the end of last year, and it will be now. Also, the appointment will be done the same fashion. The council will nominate by making a motion and a second, and by majority vote, we're gonna appoint from the council member currently, myself, council member Johnson. We are both serving on the DDA, so it will have to be somebody else who is obviously not in the DDA right now. And we have Councilmember Hassan, Carroll, and Hopkins who are not currently serving on the board and could potentially join the board of the DDA or CDA, should I call it. And if there are any questions on this agenda item, I will respond to that. Do you want to add anything, Councilmember Carroll?
No, I don't have anything to add. I think you summarized it. I would be willing to serve, but that may be something the council would want to discuss at the next meeting. I didn't know if there were other council members, Hassan or Hopkins, was also interested in being on it.
Well, Hopkins, go ahead, Laura.
Oh, I said I would be interested to be on it. I was hoping to be on it when last time they were appointing people, but everybody was appointed before I was inaugurated, I think.
Well, thank you for your interest, both of you, and I think we're gonna do the nomination and the voting on next Tuesday's meeting. So if there are any questions from the public, or any comments, I'd love to also hear that, and I'll open the floor right now.
Mr. Brian Medford has his hand up. Mr. Medford, please proceed. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, so to prevent a situation like what happened to Laura before, since we have an open council seat coming up for election, I'd like to see this put off until we have a full council again, just so we can make sure whoever ends up in that space also gets an equal shot at being appointed to the DDA. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Yes. Can I talk? Hello?
Yep. Mr. Hedlock, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
I sort of agree with Brian. I very much support Laura. I think Laura would be excellent. I think it might be a good idea to wait at least until after the November 3rd election. I don't know if we need to wait another 6 months or 5 months or whatever it is until we elect a council member, especially since that council member may or may not be in for more than several months. But for the mayoral election, that'd be my preference. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. I think Ms. Hood was raising her hands.
We had Dean Moore first, and then Ms. Hood.
Okay.
I would let Ms. Hood go first.
Go ahead, Ms. Hood. Thanks.
You're muted. Susan, we can't hear you.
Mute myself there. Okay.
Yeah.
The city manager did that. I would just like to join with what Warren said. At minimum, I would like to see this appointment held until after the election for mayor, and possibly until we get the other council seat filled. I just don't think with our diminished council, et cetera, that now is the time to make that appointment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Moore.
Yes. I agree that this position shouldn't be filled until there is a full council seated. But at the same time, my understanding is that this position with the Clarkston Development Authority is only until the next November election, or actually January, for the transition, as we will also have a full election for 3 council members at the same time, that I'd like to see us put off until 2022, when we are up and running with a full council and an elected mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute,
Any
one more
other-
thing. I'm sorry, I forgot one other important point is that my understanding is that there's no urgency of the Clarkston Development Authority to do any form of business at this point anyway. And waiting until 2022 would certainly be a fresh start with a new council. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
I have a
You have-
question on
Please.
of it. If we wait until after this next election in November, the only person who will be new will be the mayor. Now, the seat that's open is a city council seat. Can that be the mayor, or do they not, for the purposes of the DDA, count as part of the city council?
So I will ask Mr. Stephen to answer that as well, but let me just put in my perspective. So technically, the mayor can be part of the DDA if he gets just like the majority vote, just like the other seats. And the question at that time was whether the mayor automatically is part of the DDA or not, and that was resolved by making it by votes, basically. So yes, it's possible that the mayor could be part of it. However, I personally feel that seat was held by a council member, and I think it would be assumed that it should be held by another council member. So I think waiting is not really necessary. We have 3 council members who are able to be part of it, and 2 of them are interested. I haven't heard from Councilmember Hassan, but I don't see why we have to wait until 1 year or 6 months. And in the meantime, that would give us enough time, particularly to the new member, that they can take the necessary courses. So, Mr. Quinn, you want to add anything?
Sure. Well, I'm kind of looking this up in real time. I hadn't previously considered that question. The act that was passed by the Georgia General Assembly to create the Clarkston Development Authority states that the governing authority of the city of Clarkston shall, by a majority of a quorum, appoint members of the governing authority. It's basically the way it states. So then the question is the mayor a member of the governing authority? I think the answer to that is yes. I would want to look at that a little bit further before we actually appointed the mayor. I think he would be eligible to be appointed by the council, not that the mayor would appoint him or herself.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other comments before we move to the next agenda item?
Okay, I just want some clarity on that, because if the mayor is not eligible for this particular seat, then I don't see the purpose in waiting for, it would be like 2 or 3 literally elections out from where we are now. At which point I would start questioning, do we really want a CDA at all if we're going to put it off for 2 or 3 elections? But if they are eligible to fill this particular seat that was YT seat that we're talking about, then yeah, then the next election we may somebody else who's eligible for that same seat. So hopefully maybe we can get that clarified by next week.
Sure.
I think we have discussed this thoroughly. I mean, I really strongly feel, I do remember I was a co-sponsor of the resolution on making the DDA formed. So, and I do recall that that we were talking whether the mayor is automatically is part of it or not. But I think at this point, the mayor is absolutely eligible. I mean, from what I remember, as long as he gets the votes necessary and the motion and the second and all that. However, in this case, I just feel if this seat was held by a former mayor, and I would have said, okay, let's wait for the mayoral election to be over. However, this seat was held by a former council member. I just feel like it should be filled by another council member again. But that's really up to the council anyway.
And another question, if
yes.
I'm not appointed or if we're not doing it right away, would it be appropriate to sign up for the DDA training with the Georgia Municipal Association?
You
I
can't.
think as a council member, you can always get the course, I believe. I think that's my understanding. I think all the council members are eligible to take the course if they want to.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. If there are no comments from the public, we're going to close it, but I will give you one more chance. I'm having a problem with my video, so I can't see if people are raising their hands or not, but
we have Dean Moore raised his hand again.
I'll give him one more minute.
Okay, yeah, the DDA structure as passed, I think it was in 1983 by the state legislature, had the generic form to have the mayor, I think, either on that DDA or as the chairman of the DDAs if the council wanted to go in that route in forming a DDA. It was basically something taken off the shelf, so it didn't have to go through the General Assembly as a constitutional amendment. We crafted ours to make it more democratic, that would allow the mayor to be on that DDA, but would not necessarily be the chairperson of the DDA. The chairperson had to be elected by the DDA as it was formed. We thought that was a better, stronger, democratic way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Yes, I do remember we went to the legislature's office in 2016, and we did have a good conversation about this specific issue. Yes, and you're absolutely correct. It's pretty democratic because it just leaves it to the entire council, including the mayor, to decide who seats in there. All right. If there are no other comments, we're going to go ahead to E3.
Just real quickly,
yeah.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Absolutely.
I've just been reading. I've been reading the charter just now on that question, and I now feel comfortable that the mayor is eligible to be appointed by the council if they would like to do so.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go to the next agenda item, E3, discuss planting in the open field and pollinator garden in Friendship Forest. And this is brought to you by me and Councilmember Hopkins. And it's actually properly, this was the result of the Environment and Transportation Committee meetings. And these were the recommendations that the committee decided to send to the entire council based on our meeting. And the idea is that there is an open field right now in the middle of Friendship Forest, in an open area that really invites active sporting, and so instead we recommending that we plant some plants, and there is a sample or an example that we a chart that we received just for discussion purposes that might be considered, and we are recommending that we plant some bushes or some plants in the open field to make it less inviting for any active sporting activities. Councilmember Hopkins, you want to add anything?
This is actually two different things, if I understand correctly. The open field area where they keep bringing down soccer goals and playing soccer and knocking soccer balls into the wetlands and running all over the place. And that would probably, we could kind of start with stopping mowing it and put some trees in there. But then the pollinator garden is separate, if I understand. So we're talking about essentially authorizing the city to spend that money or invest in doing those two different plantings.
Thank you for reminding me. I actually totally forgot about it. Yes, you are totally correct. So this got two parts. The first part is, like Councilmember Hopkins said, planting of trees in the open field, plus planting of any kind of different flowering plants at the former tennis court. It used to be a tennis court in the middle of Friendship Forest, and we did plant back in 2016 and 17, but since then it has not been planted, and I think this is having a pollinator garden is a great idea. I know that there is one bee farmer in Clarkston, and hopefully we have a lot more. And overall, though, I think pollinator gardens are the really great part of the ecosystem. So, and the idea and the funding for this will come from the transportation and from the environmental initiatives fund from the general budget that was budgeted last year. For this year. So we are hoping to, with less cost, but understandably it might be expensive, but regardless of how much it's going to be, at least to $25,000, I think, to fix that open field and pollinator garden would be great. I think it's going to depend on a bid, I guess. So we will direct the city manager to make a bid for this job, I guess.
I do have a question.
Please, go ahead.
Do we have a regular contractor that we go to for environmental issues, or like refer the wetlands and that sort of thing to find out? I would like to see like the open field planted with, just native trees, but do we have somebody, not obviously an employee of the city, but that is our regular go-to person for environmental?
It depends on what we're doing, but we have and will continue to hire a knowledgeable firm company to provide whatever service we're looking to do. So for the plantings, we would issue a bid and have a landscape company, just as we did recently for the permeable landscaping at the 3 locations. We will issue a bid, wait for responses, and then bring the recommendation to the council to proceed with hiring the company, firm, et cetera. So for the wetlands, we will be hiring somebody to do the maintenance of the wetlands. The construction, the improvements at Friendship Forest included the hiring of a company knowledgeable that installed the wetlands. As we proceed, now that the park is completed, we will be hiring somebody to do the maintenance specifically of the wetlands because we don't have somebody on staff to do that. Certainly for the plantings, we will do the same based on your direction from the council.
Because I'm thinking for the open field, because we're probably talking about trees, this would be an area for the city arborist, I think, to consult on.
Again, we don't have a city. We've been using firms who have a certified arborist to do certain work, and we will obviously ensure that we have somebody who is knowledgeable in that.
Any comments or questions from the council first, if there are any more? All right. If not, I'm opening the floor for public comments. If you want to speak on any of, specifically on E3, please go ahead, raise your hand or wave your hands or something.
Yes. Thank you. I provided everybody, I believe, with a site sketch from Ron Huffman at, I think it's AMEC, who did our
agenda. Yes.
Did both of our, yeah, there you go. I can't see the agenda without it, unless Robin put something up there. And so that could be followed. I don't think we, depending on how much the bids come in at, I don't think it has to be as, I think it could be adjustable. It doesn't have to be quite as much vegetation, depending on, once again, how much money people are going to want. I kind of think at $20,000-$25,000 for that area, it shouldn't be a big deal. Kind of more inclined to support putting that forth as the first priority over the tennis court area. But if we can get them both done, that'd be great. Although I think John Huth had a good idea, idea of possibly letting that tennis court area reforest naturally, which it's doing already. I'm just a little bit concerned that the extent to which it's reforested already might be a substantial cost in clearing it and then doing the proper prep for a wildflower garden, which we also don't have a design for. I didn't ask Ron Huffman to do a design for that area. He did this for free. He's a great guy. He's also a great person to talk to as far as what would be appropriate and inappropriate. I mean, I think what he put forward, all of that is appropriate and is all native species of plants and trees. So, you may want to consider having him as something of a consultant. I don't know if he'll have the time for it or not. His company generally does mega projects. I mean, really big stuff. So at any rate, I think the priority ought to be the open field area next to the wetland. And then, we have possibility of including or just setting aside for right now the pollinator area, but maybe that should just depend once again on how the bids come in. That's all I have.
Thanks, Phil. Any other comments or questions?
John Huth has his hand up.
Okay. Also, Ms. Hood is next.
Yeah, so I would try to make sure that they blend vegetation in with what's in the immediate area so that it doesn't look like it's artificially been landscaped. Maybe even carry some of the vegetation, the shrubs, into the forest 10, 20 feet, something like that. So it looks like it has been there for some time, you know, a year or two from now. In the pollinator garden, I think that should be probably scattered out throughout the park and not just in one area. I'm not sure how the bees and the butterflies would like that. They may prefer it all in one spot, but I think if it's scattered out a bit, it might help. It won't put any pressure on any one area per se. That's it.
Thank you, John. Ms. Hood?
Yes, I think both of these items will be an improvement to the wildlife refuge nature preserve that we have there. I like the pollinator aspect, and to John's recent immediate comments about whether it should be in one place or a smaller place and spread out. I think talking to someone who would understand how those work best would be a good idea, because I don't know anybody that would be aware of that in Clarkston. So if someone said, yes, it should be spread out, but also a concentrated area, whatever the experts say, I would like to see us go with. And I do like the idea that the planted area where it is now grass not look out of place, as John mentioned, have it, look like it was part of the original plan and fits well with the surrounding vegetation. And of course, wildflowers, natural plants, native to this area, very important. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Hood. Any other comments on this agenda item? I'm sorry, let's see if there is any other people.
When you say that, do you see Warren is raising his hand?
Yes, I just want to give some other people a chance, and then I'll come back to him. All right, if there is nobody else, go ahead, Mr. Hadlock.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that time is an issue here too, because we're going into the fall, and we have a limited kind of window there to get this done. This is ideally done in the fall, and so if we do an RFP, I imagine the city manager will probably have a week or two to get that together, and then about 10 days to advertise it minimum, and then we would have to get that bidder to get in here in a timely fashion. So it's asking for a bid this month. I wish we'd been able to get this on the agenda a couple of months ago, but hopefully, we take that into consideration. Put it off till the spring. It's just, anyway, it's better to do it. The money's in the budget and the plan has been done. And so I urge you to move forward with it expeditiously. And also, as far as what John Huth was talking about, the blending into the to the open field area from the wetland plant area, I think if you look at the plan, I think Ron has sort of done that with beautyberry bushes along the edge there and that type of thing. So look for. I'd like to talk to John some more about this, maybe privately. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to add that the time element is there. Hopefully, Robin can drive this forward with intention. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
I do have a question is, do we need to do an RFP if we have a plan here that was done by a professional for that space that lists out the plants and their native plants? Is our Public Works Department able to take this, go get the plants and go with it? Is it something that we need to start over from point zero? Because it looks like we already have something. And how much can our Public Works Department just do this?
Mr. Gomez?
Currently, our city ordinance requires that anything over $5,000 that we bid out. And we need to change that, but that's what the current city code says. And this looks like we would be spending over $5,000, but we've tried to stay away from no bid contracts, no bid agreements. So that's my comment and my concern.
Thank you. I think as a matter of procedure, I think we probably might have to bid it, I think.
Versus our own people doing it? And do we have the manpower? That's another question. I mean, would it be over 5,000 like just in plants? Is that what we're talking about? Because
that's what it appears from the drawing, that it would be more than that. But I mean, I'm not an expert, but I know it would appear to be more than that. And then when you include the labor, but if we could go out and price what's on that sketch, and then we could install it. But the cost is really in the labor. But yes, it's something that our staff could plant, having the correct guidance, and certainly we could do that.
Thank you.
okay.
All right. There's no other comments. We got a lot of other agenda
Dean
items.
Moore has his hand up.
Go ahead, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I'm curious, if we do this in-house, can that still be paid for through transportation funding?
It would come from the same budget. It doesn't matter whether it's in-house or we outsource it.
Okay, just checking. Thank you.
And we could also do it under direction. We could get a professional to direct the project. So that might be a good idea.
All right. I think we have exhausted this agenda item. We're going to go to E4. Discuss all park signage be written and coordinated by a park management professional, a naturalist interpreter, or someone with content knowledge in environmental studies, natural sciences such as watersheds, ecology, or zoology, as well as park management. And this is being introduced by me and Councilmember Hopkins. And this is also another product of the Environment and Transportation Committee. I actually would love to refer to Councilmember Hopkins to present it better.
This is exactly as it says. The park signage really needs to be written by somebody whose specialty that is. I'm just very concerned about the signs that were presented for Friendship Forest. They were presented at the Environmental Committee, and we were told that the dimensions on there weren't right because there was a big red hand that said no swimming, and it said 3 foot by 5 foot, and there's supposed to be 12 of them around the water. He said that was a typo, but also they didn't have depictions of the actual type of signs that they were talking about. And of course, the wording wasn't exactly what they planned on either. So if they didn't have the correct dimensions, the correct words, or the correct pictures of the type of signs we were talking about, it just drew my attention to the fact that we really need to make sure that park professionals are doing the signage. I did notice that there's a I don't know when it went up, but a sign outside 40 Oaks, it says 40 Oaks Park, which I believe is, or was 40 Oaks Nature Preserve. And it's a metal, like, city type sign on a metal post that doesn't look park-like. And I think we need to just make sure that we have park interpretation professionals doing the signage.
Thank you, Councilmember Hopkins. I mean, I think this is, as Councilmember Hopkins clearly said it, it's just straightforward proposal, and this is not just for Friendship Forest. This is just a policy for all parks in the future or existing ones if necessary, if we need to update some of the signs. I think it's just, we have to definitely review our policy and practices in terms of signage. So I totally agree with this. And if there are any questions or comments on this agenda item, please, first let me see if there are any council members who have a question on this. All right. Since there is none, go ahead. I will open the public to speak on this agenda item.
Mr. Medford raised his hand. Please proceed.
Want to sound like a broken record, but don't forget the translations, folks. They need to be in the most common languages spoken in Clarkston. So as the son-in-law of an ecologist, my kids and I can't walk through the woods without picking up bugs and looking at stuff. So I'll definitely back the signage being written by a knowledgeable person. But I really do feel that we have to make sure it's specified that it will be translated. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good.
Yes, second, totally what Brian just said. Very important, both points.
I have a question, Councilmember Hopkins. So I think the translation, would it be possible to have the signs also translated, or have some translation on a paper that can be given out on request? Because which language are we going to pick in this? I mean, I know the pictograph would be very helpful when it's done by a professional, but trying to translate it in many languages is definitely going to be a challenge.
I think that's where we're going to refer to an interpretation professional, because it depends on what the sign is. I mean, if it's a no parking here sign, that's one thing. And if it is a sign interpreting the nature, like directing the visitors to look at what kind of plants or to notice this type of thing or that type of natural resource, then you would want to get it in the common languages, because it's the park itself is going to lose a lot of meaning if they don't have interpretation in a language that all our visitors can understand. Obviously, we're not going to hit all of them. We're not going to do it in 40 languages, but we might pick the top 8.
Okay. And so are we going to have the translation also on the panels? Because that's where it's going to be very difficult. I mean, and in terms of the majority language, I really, I cannot tell you that that's a very fluid, because we don't know who's going to come in the future from which country, which part of the world. And a lot of people actually also move from Clarkston. So, I mean, the constituency is not always the same. So, I mean, are we going to keep updating our language? It's going to be really difficult. But
we could potentially do the primary panels in English and then shows that are identical in different languages.
Yeah, thank you. All right. I'll get it back to the public. Mr. Hadlock, I see your hand. Warren?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
I got muted for a minute. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Owet. You can't clutter up an interpretive signage, which is going to have drawings, pictures, whatever on it. You can't clutter it up with a lot of wordage. You want to keep that kind of to a minimum and still be informative enough. And so, yeah, I think the common language is English, and it's not too much to expect. And it's interesting to me that the people who are speaking in favor of this are born Americans, and the person who is being practical about it, Owet, is a former refugee and immigrant, non-native English speaker. So maybe you guys are speaking too much for the immigrant population. I meet a lot of immigrants in Friendship Forest, mostly immigrants, and I always speak English to them when I speak, and they're able to communicate. So don't sell them short. You might do printed material in several languages and have a printed, maybe 2-page flyer or something, an informational flyer at the trailhead where the parking is. That would be a good idea, except maybe people would vandalize it and throw them all over the ground. Hopefully not, but that's a possibility. But I wouldn't go overboard just underestimating our immigrant population's ability to adapt to English and interpretive signage there. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments from the public?
John Huth has a hand up, and then Dean Moore, and then Lisa Williams.
Yeah, I think the ideas of the translations are a good idea. To have more than one language on the signs, we'd have to skip down a couple lines in the agenda to the billboards, because that's what you would need is the billboard to have all the different languages. Probably the best thing would be to have a QR code in the lower corner of the panel, and have that lead to a website that would have translations. That way you could have 2 translations or 200 translations, however many you want to have on the website. That would be the easiest way. As far as translations, you also need to have an audio description to where somebody that is blind can go to a website and get the message read to them, so that they can take advantage of it too, so that they'll know that they're in a wildlife sanctuary, and what they hear beeping is maybe a frog and not the horn on some car or something. So there's several different areas that have to be considered here. And one other advantage of having some translations is maybe if it's in some other languages that it is not a soccer field, people will understand that they are not to play soccer there. So, it's a very complex issue, but I think having a QR code going to a web page would be the easiest, most cost-effective method. If anybody's wondering what a QR code is, it's those little squares that they used to be on the buses about 5 years ago, advertising, you name it, and they had a QR code that you could go to. They're kind of out of fashion, but they're coming back from what I understand. That's it for me.
Thanks, John. Is that Lisa next or Dean? One of them. Lisa, go ahead.
Hey, everybody. I just wanted to note that all of these comments are actually, every single one of them is very helpful. and would love to package up all this feedback for the professional park consultant, because they obviously might have some experience here. And also we might want to poll the community. A lot of the parks are frequented by families, and I know from just working out in the community that oftentimes there are school-age children who are learning English rapidly, but we certainly want to have options for non-English speaking people there, whatever those may be. All great suggestions, and we may want to even speak with Chief Hudson and see if she has any feedback or information, because she's out there in the communities a lot, to see where the language barriers are and what might be needed in a park setting. But I think all this feedback given to the professional consultant would be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Dean?
Yes, the suggestion I had was identical to John. I mean, the language barrier and the issues with languages goes back to the Tower of Babel. And I think we need to come up with a 21st century solution so that we don't clutter up our sign or make the sign enormous in size just to cover many languages that may or may not be pertinent in another couple of years or another decade. So I think QR code is a great idea. And then when the next method of communication comes along, we have the option to switch up what that might be. But I think at this time, the QR code is probably the most economical way to do it. Everybody carries some sort of a communication device with them at this point. And I think that'd be the best way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is that all? Do we have any other comments before we close it? All right, thanks everybody. We're gonna go to the next agenda item, which is E5, discuss an update to ordinance where land disturbance and stream buffers are concerned to increase undisturbed buffers from 50 feet to 75 feet. And this has been introduced again by me and Councilmember Hopkins. Again, as the previous two agenda items, this one is also a result of the environmental committee's meetings. This is pretty much the easiest one, I think, to understand. It's basically right now the buffer between a stream and any kind of development is right now 50 feet, and it will be environmentally speaking pretty conservative and good idea to increase that amount to 75 feet to protect our streams and increase the buffer basically to strengthen that part of our ordinance in terms of protecting our environment. This would make it the same as DeKalb County. I want to thank Councilmember Hopkins, but particularly I want to thank Ms. Williams. She worked a lot on this agenda item at the Environmental Committee, and I will give her a chance later. But is there anything you want to add, Councilmember Hopkins, to before?
Just that I think this is important to be in alignment with DeKalb County. I'm afraid sometimes developers are coming here because we have more lax rules on certain things like this. And so I want to be clear, this isn't just no development on this land, it's undisturbed, which means they have to leave all the natural plants for 75 feet, and then will be in alignment with the rest of the area around Clarkston and help preserve our streams.
Absolutely. And to give us a little more clarification, I will recognize Ms. Williams, if you want to say a few words on these agenda items.
Yeah, just echoing both you and Councilmember Hopkins. We got some significant erosion in our streams here in Clarkston. So we just want to get in line with the areas around us. We don't want to have, you know, weaker protections for our environment than the surrounding counties and cities. So I think an increase to 75 feet should be an easy fix. It's non-related to zoning. It's just a way to better protect our streams. And we really don't need to waste any time on getting that protection in place. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And are there any questions from the council on this agenda item?
This is Councilman Carroll. The one thing I just want to make sure is that we don't make it retroactive for any existing permits, because I know we've had trouble with lawsuits or threatened lawsuits in the past. So I just wanted to make sure there would be kind of something that would be going forward. Any future developer would have to comply with this, but I think it does seem reasonable to make sure that our laws coincide with DeKalb County and not be like an exception to the county surrounding us on this issue.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I totally agree. I mean, we can't be retroactive. Any other questions from the council first? All right, if there are none, I open the floor to the public to comment on agenda item E5. Please raise your hand. All right, Ms. Sood.
Yes, I agree it should not be retroactive. I'm wondering if there's the need to put a moratorium on land disturbance permits between now and when this becomes effective. Would it become effective if it is voted in the affirmative at the council meeting next week, or would there be a reason why it might take longer than that? Because as we have seen in the past, a developer may say, I want to get my application in before they make such a change. So I just raised that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. I certainly believe it will be effective if it passes and if the council supports it. I think it will pass and it will be effective on next Tuesday. Any other questions or comments? If I'm correct, if I'm not correct, Mr. Quinn, I think this is the time for you to stop me.
No, I agree with your assessment, Mr. Vice Mayor, and what Ms. Williams said earlier, that this is not a zoning ordinance because it applies to every property with a stream, regardless of what zone it's in, and therefore we are not required to go through the zoning process, and the council is free to adopt this ordinance change on Tuesday and to make it effective immediately.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Hadlock.
I just wanted to voice my support for this. I agree with Lisa and what everybody's been saying so far.
Can you be a little bit loud? I'm sorry.
Sure. How about now? I wanted to just voice my support for this, and that I agree with Lisa. Thank Lisa for her work on this. She's done a lot of work on this and in our tree ordinance. And that's all.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments?
I just have a question that might be for Ms. Cooey or for Mr. Gomez. There's nothing, nobody could put in an application like tomorrow between now and next Tuesday and get approval for something within between 50 and 75 feet from a stream, would they?
I don't know of any developments right now that could have a stream by it. But there was one person that wanted to split a lot that did have a stream buffer, and I think it was off of, trying to determine where was the house, but they didn't have enough. The lot size was too small for them to split the lot in half or the buffer to be next to it, so.
I would just put in a request, don't approve anything between now and next Tuesday that this would impact. I mean, obviously all permits that have been granted and that's done, but just so that nothing jumps in this window because we do have a week and that's sort of thing has happened before.
Correct.
All right. If there are no more comments from the public, we're going to go ahead.
Mr.
And
John Hutt has his hand up.
Absolutely. Go ahead, John.
Okay, one last comment. Would this extend to wetlands and bodies of water, or is it just streams? Because it really should extend to any wetlands that are within the city. Right now, the only wetland I can think of is Friendship Forest, but I would hate to see our city crew go in there and mow right up to the edge of the wetlands, similar to what they did at the entrance to 40 Oaks, where they mowed bush hog right up to the stream. So I think it should include just about any body of water, not streams, but also lakes, ponds, and wetlands, because they're as much at risk as a stream is. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think that's all for this agenda item. And our next agenda item is E5. Discuss an update to ordinance where land disturbance and I'm sorry, my bad. I think we just discussed this. The next one is E6, approve a resolution declaring October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the city of Clarkston, and this is being introduced by Councilmember Johnson and myself. Councilmember Johnson, please go ahead and.
Good evening. Yes, I brought this resolution into order because I lost my sister yesterday, made a year during my run for city council, and I've become very passionate about educating people on the resources they have available, warning signs of people being abused or the lack of. So I would like this to become one of our resolutions to recognize October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I've been working in conjunction with several organizations in the surrounding area, like Tapestry, the DeKalb County, and the Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence. So one of the things I wanted to do is first acknowledge October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and then host an annual event in remembrance of the survivors of domestic violence. Everyone doesn't die as a result, but they are affected as a result, and we have survivors out there. So I would like to publicly distribute prevention materials, resource materials, and actually have an event. So the floor is open for discussion. It's just something that I'm passionate about.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Johnson. And I just want to say, may your sister rest in peace. And I do remember that time, and it was definitely a sad thing. And I appreciate your passion on trying to help other victims of domestic violence. And I do remember in a conversation with Councilmember Hopkins that she kind of reminded me of one issue that is kind of could be prevalent among immigrant communities is a lot of times the mothers or the wives tend to be the ones who don't speak more English, and you have the husband translating for the victim, and that's something we definitely need to be considerate of, and we definitely have a lot of work to do in terms of educating our immigrant community that particularly when it comes to domestic violence. Any on the council?
I just want to say that I really appreciate Councilwoman Johnson for bringing this up. I think it is important that we do what we can to get information into everybody's hands, to recognize the warning signs, to be able to check in with friends and family members if you think they might be in trouble, or yourself, and resources you can go to, because unfortunately it is very widespread in every group, nationality, and anything we can do to help someone get out to prevent tragedies, then we need to do it.
And we ranked 10th in the nation in 2019.
Okay.
Is that the state of Georgia?
Yes, the state of Georgia ranked 10th in the nation, and that was just men killing women. With firearms, it was 73% of the domestic violence fatalities in 2019. So it's there, and it is an ongoing problem. And I just want to raise awareness in Clarkston.
Totally agree.
We can do better.
Mr. Vice Mayor, Assistant Chief Hess would like to chime in. Go ahead, Chief.
Hey, good evening, everyone. First and foremost, Councilwoman Johnson, I'm terribly sorry for your loss. I would like to extend the PD in any assistance in any way, shape, or form that we can provide in this initiative. Domestic violence calls probably ranks the highest calls that we respond to on a daily, monthly, and annual basis. Luckily, we've had a few, but nothing to the extreme of causing death or great bodily harm. But this is definitely something that's that we're willing to assist with, and this will actually, one of the things that the police department is working on is quarterly, if not monthly, training sessions. And if it's something we could partner with you, Ms. Johnson, about, we are 100% on board, and any assistance we can provide, we will be there 100% for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief Hess. I just want to also say I do remember during at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a little bit uptake of domestic violence calls, also in Clarkston and even nationally as well. And I think it is important to remember that as we are working at home, I do understand we are staying with our husbands quite longer than we used to, and I think we definitely have this particular resolution could certainly be used, and eventually we could educating our citizens in terms of that domestic violence is here and is real. Comments from the community on this agenda item. I think Mr. Hadlock had his hands up. Go ahead, sir.
No, I just wanted to give very strong support for this. I know in the end it's going to take a lot, and we're going to have sensible gun legislation, gun regulating laws in this nation, and until we do, we're going to have to guns. But I think that, you know, I very much support what Deborah is doing and working on here. Thank you.
Beverly Burks has her hand up.
Go ahead.
Hey, I just wanted to also echo in support of this resolution. And one of the things that we've been doing from my position with the FDHA is looking at the numbers of domestic violence that have increased since COVID. And so we've seen pretty much a 15% increase or more as a result of it. So any way that we can help the survivors, any way that we can make sure in terms of getting the resources and information to our community, I think that is very critical at this point, because you're seeing a prevalence of people being laid off, and that also contributes to the increase in domestic violence as well. So thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? If there is none, we're going to go to our next agenda item, which is E7, to consider a no alcohol beverage license application, and I recognize our city manager to introduce this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. This item is to present to the council to approve a alcohol beverage license application for a new owner of an existing business, Lulu's Package Store, located at 3900 East Ponce de Leon Avenue. The new owners submitted an application, provided all the required information. All the required inspections have been performed, including a required background check. So all the paperwork, all the reviews are pursuant or in accordance with our existing City of Clarkston ordinance. So what we call our Alcohol Review Committee, we recommend that the applicant be approved, again, as a change of ownership, so a new owner for an existing business, again, Lulu's Package Store. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Vice Mayor, a representative from the applicant is also on the meeting.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to ask a quick question first. Is the applicant aware of our transfer rules?
Yes, she is.
Okay, all right.
She's aware.
All right. Any comments and questions from the council?
I have a question. Who's on the Alcohol Review Committee?
Myself, the city manager, Tracy Ashby, the city clerk, our Shanita Smith, our code enforcement officer. Tracy, who am I missing?
Has Tracy left?
The chief of police and Shawana are also on the committee.
Sorry.
Okay.
Chief Hudson and Shawana Coway, Planning and Development Director. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions from the council?
Did the new owner want to make a presentation? Or
I think there's anything to present.
Yeah,
or make any comment, Ms. Ayele?
No comment. I just wanted to know, I know, I guess the decision would be made on your next week meeting.
Yes.
If it's approved, when can we expect to get the license?
Likely the next day.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
That's good. That's good.
I have a question for the new owner. Do you actually live in Clarkston?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I'm wondering, do you live in Clarkston?
No, she lives in Gwinnett County.
Okay.
But mhm.
Any questions from the council? All right. Any comments or questions on this agenda item? All right.
Mr. Moore has his hand up, Mr. Vice Mayor. Sorry.
Am I recognized?
Oh,
I didn't catch that.
go ahead, Mr. Moore.
Okay. Now, I know at one time we had a requirement that there's a representative of the store living in DeKalb County for the purposes of serving papers or some form of responsibility. Is that still the case? And I see on the application that somebody living on Plantation Place, which is in the city, but that may be a transitional person. I'm not sure if Plantation Place is an apartment or a townhome, but do we have any means of maintaining that person still lives there for the duration of this application for this license? Thank you.
I'm afraid I did not hear some of the questions. At the beginning, it was breaking up.
Okay,
I don't know.
I'll try again.
Go ahead.
My understanding was that our alcohol license required someone to live in the county to be responsible in the event that papers need to be served or some liability. If that is still the situation, I know there's somebody on the application that lives in Clarkston as a local representative, and my impression of that location is possibly as a rental household that could be considered a transitional property. Do we have any means of making sure that person still lives within the county during the duration of this application, or in the event that person moves, what are the options for the city and the owner of the establishment to continue that permit? Is my question.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I think I am not exactly sure if the named person rents or owns the property, so that I'm not sure about. And I think I want to ask Mr. Quinn to speak on this since it's kind of legal matter.
I'm sorry, I had a little trouble hearing that. Could you pose the question again?
Dean, can you go ahead and ask him?
Okay, during the duration of this permit, my understanding is that someone is required to live in DeKalb County for the purposes of liability or serving papers or for whatever reason that requirement is there. Is there any way to guarantee that the person who may be renting on Plantation Place, what does oversight of the city look like in a situation where that person may move out of the county? Would the owner have to come forward and present somebody else on their own honest accord, or is that something that the city has in place that they would check on that person from time to time to make sure that requirement is still being met in the event of some liability?
Okay, well, I can just speak to, what our ordinances require rather than how the city enforces it or carries it out. I'm not familiar with that, but it's true that the alcohol chapter of the code requires the licensee, if they themselves are not a DeKalb resident, to designate a registered agent within DeKalb County. And if that agent leaves the county and the licensee does not timely replace them with an appropriate, basically, if they don't keep an agent in the county, they can lose their license.
And if I could just add on, it's Tracy Ashby, the city clerk. Every year when we go through the renewal process with the alcohol licenses, that's one of the items that we review for any package or convenience stores, that they do have a proper registered agent if their manager or owner is not a resident of DeKalb County. And also code has the authority to go out periodically through the year and verify that all the businesses that have alcohol are compliant.
Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. And hopefully the owner understands that requirement as well.
Thanks, sir. Any questions or comments on this agenda?
I have a question for the new owner. If she's planning a significant change in staff at Lulu's, or if it's going to be hoping for a continuation of the same business.
It's going to be exactly continuation of the same business. They're not planning to change anything at all. And I do like to comment on the agent. Yes, they do have an agent that lives in DeKalb County. That's going to be a registered agent. So I know the state alcohol requires that, and we have already prepared someone. He's actually a manager there working right now, and he lives in DeKalb County. So he's going to be the agent.
Thank you, ma'am.
No problem.
Any other questions? All right. I don't see anybody else. Okay. I'm going to close the comments on this agenda item. We're going to go move to next agenda item, E8, which is City Council to adopt a resolution authorizing the adoption of the 2016 DeKalb County Pre-Disaster Hazard Mitigation Plan. And I want to recognize our city manager, Robin Gomez, on this. Mr. Gomez?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor and council members. Pretty straightforward, this item. We were requested by the county, by DeKalb Emergency Management Agency, to have our city council adopt a resolution simply authorizing that we previously had adopted, or to adopt, the 2016 DeKalb County Pre-Disaster Hazard Mitigation Plan. Apparently, the county has no record that we approved this in the past, so they were requesting that we adopt this resolution, simply stating that we are going to follow the county's essentially emergency management plan. The county stated that the next update will take place in 2022, so they made this request in advance in anticipation of the next update, and in order for us to receive any future type of reimbursement for disaster, for any natural disaster.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. And I'm just curious about the timing. If it is going to be something that will that's due in 2022, why are we passing it now?
That was we're just complying with their request.
Okay.
Does COVID count as a natural disaster? Would this tie it to our money reimbursement from the federal government for the COVID relief?
No, I don't think COVID is a natural disaster. I think that's a man-made. No, I'm not really sure, but I don't. In the hazard plan, it pretty much only covered natural disasters, your earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, etc.
Not pandemic, I guess. Okay.
No, which I think could be both. That's would appear to be somewhat man-made. It could be natural, but it's not in the definition of the plan.
Thanks, sir. Any questions from the council on this item? Thank you. Open questions or comments from the public on agenda item E8. All right, I see nobody. We move into the next agenda item, which is E9, which is, before I ask you to introduce this agenda item, Mr. Gomez, aren't E9 up to E12 the same? Very similar. The reason of the denial is the same. Can we make it a consent agenda and discuss them together?
They are 4 separate items, as they are 4 separate applications. And this item is really for next week, just as the applicant has appealed the city's decision, the city's denial of their 4 applications for the 4 sign permits or the 4 billboards.
Got you. So should we deal with them one by one?
Yes.
That's fine. All right, E9, which is appeal of the city denial of sign permit application from Railroad Outdoor LLC to erect a 14 by 48 and 22, I don't know what that is, but anyway, some measurements of the billboard, OAH billboard sign on the property located at 3611 Church Street. And I will recognize Mr. Gomez again to introduce this.
Yeah, again, Mr. Vice Mayor and council members, this is an item where we have denied an application, a sign permit application to the stated applicant, and they would like to appeal that in front of the city council, which the appeal will take place at next Thursday evening's council meeting.
And from the agenda plus the weekly report that I read, the reason being, I think about 4 reasons which all that they don't meet the distance requirement from residential parcel and also from other billboards, I believe. And
yes.
And I think it is really a legitimate denial from what I read on your weekly report and also from this. I'm not sure if there is anything we can do besides upholding our ordinance, unless we want to change our ordinance on this. And are there any questions from the council on this agenda item?
If they do a direct in-person appeal next week, would we be expected to vote on it immediately?
Yes, that is the purpose of the item. Each one of the 4 items, yes.
So this is Councilman Carroll. I know that we saw a letter in the packet from them, from the applicants, and I understand Stephen probably doesn't want to give legal advice on the work session, but I was wondering if Attorney Quinn could maybe write a response or a memo kind of summarizing the law on this and the city code to the council before we make the decision next Tuesday.
I agree. And if Mr. Gomez, then in that case, can you go ahead, unless they are all the same reasons for the denial? I see that in E9, the reason for the denial was those 2 things I said earlier. Billboard signs are prohibited within 500 feet of residential parcel. And the second one is billboard signs are prohibited within 1,000 feet of the other billboards. Are those the 2 pertaining particularly to this one?
They are to the same. It is for one of the other applications, and then the other two applications have additional city code reasons for the denial.
And I'm just curious. So I do know that there are some billboard signs. I know there is one on Montreal. But are those grandfathered or something, or they actually also do meet the distance, or was there some change to our ordinance, I guess?
We currently have 4 billboards that are in the city on the east side of I-285. 3 of those have been there since 1990, and the 4th one has been there since at least 2009. The current city code, I believe, well, Mr. Quinn can add, but those have been there for that long of a time. I'd have to go back and look exactly when our ordinance was adopted. It could have, but regardless, they've been here for a long time. That's all, I mean, that's what I can tell you now. These are, again, pursuant to our code of ordinances, not allowed.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the council? All right, any comments or questions from the public?
I strongly oppose any billboards wherever we can keep them out. I think is great.
Thanks, sir. Any other comments?
Hello?
Mr. Medford and Ms. Hood have their hands up.
Go ahead, Susan.
I would hope that the city council will uphold our signage regulations and vote to deny the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Sud.
Okay. Yeah, I reviewed the zoning rules for billboards earlier, then took a look at the packet, and it is extremely clear cut that these do not meet our code. I read the rather interesting letters that were sent by the other lawyer that represented the sign company, and frankly, if they want to take this to court, so be it. But our laws, I'm pretty sure, are well written, they are well constructed, and they will stand up to whatever they want to throw at us. I'm not really interested in some sign company trying to bully us into 4 big old billboards that are outside a residential area. So this seems to be extremely clear cut vote for the council next week. I hope they can see it that way, regardless of whatever bullying tactics are brought before them. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Any other comments? All right. Seeing none, we're going to go to the next agenda item, which is E10. This agenda items are all identical, almost. An appeal of city denial of sign permit application from Railroad Outdoor LLC to erect the billboard sign on the property located at 3874 East Ponce de Leon Avenue. Again, our city manager, Mr. Gomez.
And Mr. Vice Mayor and Council, again, this is similar to the item E9. The reasons for the city's denial, again, the applicant has requested an appeal, and the reasons for the denial are same as the item E9. The billboard signs are prohibited within 500 feet of the residential parcels, and they are prohibited within 1,000 feet of other billboards.
Thanks, sir. Any questions from the council? I think we have already asked the questions. They all seem the same. Any comments from the public? That's different.
Am I recognized?
Yes, go ahead.
I will just repeat my comment from the previous item, and to save time, it applies to the next two items that I hope council will vote to uphold the city's sign ordinance and vote to deny the appeal. Thank you.
So, I just got out of curiosity, I want to ask Mr. Gomez. Are there any benefits of having the billboard, financial benefits to the city?
For these 4 billboards, no. They are all, the applicant has the addresses that are for each one of the 4 items, although within our city limits, are not on any city property. They are on, 2 of them are on CSX right of way, and the other 2 are on private property.
Okay. All right. Any questions or comments again? We're going to go to the next agenda item, and if you feel you want to comment on any of them, please feel free to comment. They're the same. E11 is appeal of the city denial of sign permit application from Railroad Outdoor LLC for billboard sign on the property located at the southerly portion of the Church Street, just outside I-285 East. And again, Mr. Gomez.
And Mr. Vice Mayor, this one, the reasons for denial because of the location of this billboard, there are a few more city code citations for the denial. In addition to the distance requirements, our code does not allow for these proposed signs to be placed on a public right-of-way or utility easement. As I stated, this proposed sign on for item E11 is proposed to be on the CSX right-of-way, a utility easement, or excuse me, CSX right-of-way, and they are prohibited within the railroad right-of-way. And additionally, billboards may only be placed on the listed parcels that are on the listed zoning districts, RC, residential commercial, NC1, NC2, TC, which is town center, or industrial. So the CSX right-of-way is not a parcel and therefore does not have any of the permissible zoning designations.
Thanks, sir. Again, these are all the same agenda items. Do we have any question from the council? All right, I will go ahead and move to E12, appeal of city denial of sign permit application from Payroll Outdoor LLC to erect a billboard sign on the property located at the southerly portion of Church Street, just outside I-285 West. Again, one last time, Mr. Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor and Council. And again, similar to item E11, the prohibitions for this one, in addition to the distance requirements, are similar, as I stated, that the signs are not allowed within public right-of-ways, utility easements, and within the railroad right-of-way. And again, billboard signs are only permitted in the listed zoning districts. And again, just to reiterate, these 4 sign permit applications, the 4 items will be 4 individual items for the City Council to hear at next Tuesday, October the 6th. Council.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gomez. I will allow just one more time if there are any council members they want to ask question or comment on these denials of sign permit. All right, I think we have discussed this pretty much. And one more last chance, if there are any members of the public, or is the applicant on the line, by the way? I guess no. Okay. But if the applicant is on the line, I would really advise them, encourage them to speak up. And okay. Well, I think that's all we had on the agenda today. I want to thank everybody for coming. We had really discussed a lot of things and got a lot of comments. Thank you so much. I will let you go back and watch the debate. We are adjourning the meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Awit. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Yeah.
Bye-bye.